And for those who already know the channel, know that here I am a fanatic for animes in the OVA category, that is original video animation. Animations with 40-50 minutes tops of length, usually telling one single original story that doesn't have any sequels, and they were mostly produced around the 80s and the 90s. And today I decided to add another great classic from the 80s to our already increasing playlist of amazing animes. Black Magic M66, a production of 1987 directed by Hiroyuki Kitakubo. That is a director that worked in many classic animes like Mobile Suit Gundam and also worked in Akira, but not in the direction, just in the production. As a director, he worked in many other productions like Black Magic M66, but also another anime that I really love called Rojin Z. That also has a great cyberpunk element to it, but it's more like a dramatic comedy kind of anime. And it deserves its own video here in the channel so I can talk about it. But Black Magic M66 is one of those animes that mix science fiction with elements of suspense and horror. All the genres that I love, especially if you consider that it takes a lot of elements from the greatest movie franchises that mixed those genres as well, especially Alien, Predator, and Terminator. Let me explain. The story takes place in the future where we have a government project with killer androids with designation M66. And the anime starts with these androids being transported in an aircraft that crashes in the middle of the forest. So the government goes to the crash site to understand what happened and discover that both androids escaped from the chambers they were locked in. Then we are introduced to a freelance reporter called Sybil that gets a tip of what happened. So she goes to the forest with her partner to get the first scoop in the news over this ultra-confidential event and get some fame. And this is where we get the first part of the anime, that is basically the army under the command of a general trying to find these androids and bring them back in the safest way possible since they are pretty lethal. Of course that this doesn't go well and the androids show up, creating a massacre with the army, displaying a lot of combat skills and weapons that are pretty lethal in their bodies. But during this combat, the army manages to destroy one of the androids and the other escapes, going after a previously programmed mission that is in his system. The truth is that these M66 models were being transported for some tests, and since they crashed in the forest, the program that was inserted in their systems told them that they had a very specific mission with a target to kill. And since they never arrived in their destination, this previous mission is still programmed in them to find the target, which in the case is the granddaughter of the scientists that created both models. Because the idiot never considered such scenario to happen, so he made her granddaughter as their target just for a test. So now one of the androids would do anything to complete this mission and destroy everything in his way just to get to her. With this, the journalist Sybil discovers the location of the girl called Ferris even before the soldiers do and decides to enter in a personal mission to find her and warn her of the danger or even protect her, leading us to a second and third act that takes us back directly to classics like the Terminator and a mix of Alien. First of all, I have to say that Black Magic M66 is a fantastically written anime by Masamune Shirow that is also the writer of Ghost in the Shell, one of the great classics, if not the great classic, of cyberpunk animes. And here this story is also based on a manga created by himself, but that has a very different tone from Ghost in the Shell, especially because besides the serious tone to the story, the anime itself has many comedic elements to it, with a lot of slapstick humor spread through it, especially because the main character Sybil is very clumsy. Even though she has to be tough in some moments, she's always stumbling on herself because she's always looking for a scoop. But besides this humor element, the anime is freaking awesome in the other elements that I love with passion, especially the cyberpunk. The futuristic cities, all the designs of the aircrafts, the semi-futuristic equipments of the soldiers. It has everything that a great cyberpunk story should have. The animation style itself doesn't have the excellence of most recent animations, but that's not a problem, especially because it's very bold with some very immersive shots in POV where the camera dives into the action or surrounds the action, done way before they could properly do this kind of shots, including the use of CGI even. And this is something that I love, especially because if you know the other anime of this director, Hojin Z, in his visual style, he loves to insert many elements into one single shot, and all these elements interacting with each other, almost like a visual chaos, but that it fills the eyes of the viewer. At the same time, it also brings a kind of realistic nature to the whole action. And here you have the same kind of style, even though this is an older anime. And in the story themes, it won't bring anything very deep towards the whole idea of artificial intelligence and robotics. It's more like a straight-up action blockbuster that you can watch while eating some popcorn and having fun. And like I said, the first act brings this suspense when the military are trying to find the androids, and that brings us directly to a Predator feel, especially with the army spread around the forest trying to find traces of these androids. And then, of course, we had the carnage of these villains attacking the soldiers and destroying their bodies in very similar ways to the Predator. And then we go to the second act where we have one single android chasing this little girl that is blonde, cute, defenseless, being chased across town, and her only salvation is in the hands of her protector, Sybil. And if that doesn't remind you Sarah Connor in the Terminator, I don't know what else would. But here, instead of having a soldier from the future coming to protect her, we have this journalist girl who has to step up to the game and become a tough badass, just like Ripley in Aliens. That besides being a clumsy woman, like I told you before, when she has to become this badass and fight the android, even using machine guns, she does so spectacularly. It is also a dynamic very similar to Ripley and Newt in Aliens. And listen, I don't know if these choices are conscious or not from the writer and director, but all these movies came before the release of this anime, so this is a great possibility. But even with all these references, this is a very impressive anime for its frenetic style and very fast pace. The story never drops the ball in any time by slowing the pace or anything like that, even in the most suspenseful scenes. The main villain or the main villainess in this case, because the M66 has female shapes, doesn't really have a design that is interesting for me. I think it's okay, but it surely is a very intimidating character in the plot. Not only because it's very lethal, but also because it's basically unstoppable. And since it kills everything in its way, especially the military, to get to the girl, it's pretty clear that the pair, Sybil and Ferris, can do nothing to stop it. The highlight goes to a scene where the android managed to corner both of them in an elevator. The three of them get stuck inside this environment, and the only weapon they have against it is a magnetic device that keeps it away from them. And it is in this scene that effect that I told you about, an immersive shot with the M66 circling both of them in the elevator, takes place. It's visually fantastic. And all of this culminates in a very explosive ending that takes place in the rooftop of a building where both of these girls are trying to get rescued by an aircraft. But during this chase, the M66 just doesn't stop. Just like the Terminator, you can basically explode the whole rooftop that he won't stop. Getting to the point that there's only a chunk of rubble for both of them to be on top of, thousands of feet off the ground for being on the top of the building, and try one last effort to destroy the robot. And I won't give away how they defeat the M66, but it's a very satisfying one. Another element that makes this OVA very rewatchable. I myself have already watched about 6 times already. Again, this is a very popcorn, blockbuster experience for you to watch it and not to think very much about deeper themes or anything like that. For those you have your Armitage 3 or AD Police, there are 2 animated miniseries that I really love and probably will talk here in the channel someday. But those are the ones that talk much more about the deeper themes of robotics, androids, and this stuff. But that doesn't take anything away from Blackmagic M66. That is an OVA that I absolutely love, and I will always keep it in my heart as one of the best in its genre. And this is it. Have you watched Blackmagic M66? What do you think? This anime can be found fully here on YouTube, so it's pretty easy if you haven't watched already to check it out. And thank you very much if you are watching the content of Trashing with Gus. I apologize because my voice is not very good today. In fact, I lost my voice recently, and just now I am regaining it. But thank you so much. If you liked this video, please don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more videos of animes, sci-fi movies, action movies, horror movies, everything we love in this life, alright? See you in the next trashy video, and bye-bye!